Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the masterclass. I figured what better way to start than asking, do you believe that you can walk on water? I think that is the operative question for this particular masterclass. If you can hear me and see me, give me a number one. Let me know that I'm not talking to myself, as always. And as soon as I know that you can all hear me, we're going to get rolling here. I'm excited. I was just reviewing the course curriculum again today, and I was like, damn, I wish I knew all of this stuff before, and I just I didn't because my head was too far up my ass. So luckily for all of you and for me, I've come to learn all of this through various channels. My time at Columbia University Business School, my time studying Tony Robbins, my time spent with billionaires that I've been grateful to either work with as clients or learn from in other ways. Uh, you know, the universal stuff. Heather, thank you. This beard will probably be gone in a couple days, unfortunately or fortunately, because Movember is over. All right, so let's get started here on how to maximize your mindset for success. Now, a lot of this stuff can be really heady and tough. And so I'm going to try my best to go sort of slowly through this, but my slow is still like on eight times speed because I'm just like a fast talker. So if at any point you want to ask a question, go ahead and ask it. I'm watching the chat. And if you ask something and I gloss over you, it might mean I'm finishing a point, or it might mean I've completely not seen it. So feel free if I miss it to recircle it to the top. If you lose me, if you suddenly can't hear me, put in all caps that you're frozen, and I'll kind of take a pause. Keep in mind that you can refresh your browser, and that typically will bring you back. All right, so how to maximize your mindset for success. We're going to go over the habits, tools, and frameworks of successful business leaders, and most importantly, how to use them. So here's the course agenda. Part one we're going to do tonight is understanding your mindset. Then we're going to move into understanding yourself. Then we're going to move from there a week from tonight into mastering your mindset, and finally, maximizing your mindset. At times, and I think I say this in class 4, at times it's going to feel like this course is like winding through and circling back on itself, and that's okay. That there's a method to the madness, as they say. So bear with me. A lot of what I've tried to do is structure this in such a way that I present a concept you can kind of think about and go away and have a little bit of homework to do and ways to try this material out starting right after the class is done, and then kind of come back and learn the next part and the next part and the next part and so on and so forth. Because you have to remember that you're about to learn things that I've learned over the course of probably about 5 years since I got my head out of my ass and started learning more about mindset and how critical mindset was. Speaking of which, you all should have Barbara Corcoran's special video. If you're watching the replay of this down the line, I can't promise it that you have access to that because that was a pretty limited special bonus. I think, Patricia, you already took a look at it, and so you know how special that video was. And I did not plan this. I did not pay her, but she said a lot of the things that I said in the webinar and a lot of the things you're going to see in this masterclass. And coming from her and how vulnerable she shared about mindset and working on mindset, you have to believe that if someone who cashed out of her business for $66 million still names mindset the #1 business differentiator, you better believe it's true. I know it's true. And over the course of this, I'm going to tell you some personal stories to also help you to understand yourself better. So today is class 1, understanding your mindset. We're going to go over who, starting with who, what that means to define who you are and define it in terms that I'm going to teach you about. We're going to cover the Johari window, which is like the foundational concept to personal development. We're going to talk about self-sabotage, and we're going to end with part 1 of emotional control. And we're going to be talking a lot about emotional control as we truck on through these master classes. All right, so we are starting at the very, very bottom, at the fundamental question, who are you and who am I? This is a topic about which I'm writing a book right now called Honest to Greatness. At least that's the working title. So I happen to know a little bit about this. I have a whole chapter dedicated to this concept. And here's the ugly truth, for better or worse, that I need you all to accept. Everything we do here and everything you do in your life, believe it or not, comes back to your identity, comes back to who you are, okay, in a very fundamental way. We're going to define that, so don't worry. Who are you? And how do you know who you are? How have you kind of defined the self? If it's so foundational and every decision you make is going to be based off who you are and what you believe, then understanding who you are is pretty fundamental. I think you would agree. So that's kind of the number one question we need to grapple with here. And to do that, I'm going to give you some exercises, okay? So I want you to think about some of the words you would use to describe yourself. If someone asked you, who are you really? Like, what are the key concepts that make you who you are? I wrote a couple here, a word like brave. Are you a brave person? Are you a clever person? Are you an ambitious person? Are you a shy person? What are the kind of the key concepts, the words you would use to define who you are? And between now and next class, I'm going to give you all homework to actually figure this out. This is really, really important. And as part of the words, I also want you to develop some of the principles that you believe in, that really make you who you are. Things like always be on time. I happen to actually be someone who believes in punctuality. That's very important to me, and that's sort of a principle I live by. Telling the truth is also a principle I try to live by as much as possible. And doing whatever it takes. I'm just that kind of person. My spirit animal growing up, and my screen name on AOL Instant Messenger, which I think are maybe the same thing or maybe not, was a phoenix. A phoenix, of course, is not a real creature, but nonetheless, from a very young age, I knew that the phoenix kind of represented me, that idea of no matter what, I could always be reborn and come out stronger. That's a core concept I believe is true. Now, I may not always have the confidence to believe in that concept within me. That's getting better all the time, as it was for Barbara Corcoran. But the thing is, that's something I believe is true, that people can rise from the ashes and be better. So, this is going to take some time. It's going to take several days and weeks. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you got to the last class and you were still jotting down these words and principles you live by. But they're essential. They are essential to capture on paper, because we're going to be referring back to them through subsequent classes. So I really want you to carve some time out of your very busy schedule, I know they are, to grapple with some of these things. What do you believe in? And then from there, we're going to move to core values. What is a core value that you hold more than any? And a really good way to do this is to get a kind of word matrix. Like, I actually did this exercise with these little index cards, and each index card had a word on it, and they were all kinds of adjectives. So here I have openness, transparency, happiness, caring. What they can be, any word you can look up. You can look up, typical core values on Google, and you'll get a slew of words. And the way I did this is I had all these cards with core values, and I started to kind of pick up all the ones that resonated with me at all. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what happens next. But when it comes to who and defining who you are, these are some of the ways that I want you to go about actually crafting this. I don't want this to be some like, oh, I think I know who I am, or I have no idea who I am. No, this is the way to define exactly who you are. And there are big business concepts that are going to come out of this exercise. So I want you to bear with me on this one, even though it can sound kind of frou-frou. Now, the next thing, once you kind of get all the words that might be resonant with you, I want you to kind of sit with them and live with them for a while. Because eventually what I'm going to want you to create is a values hierarchy. Now, a values hierarchy is a list of your most authentic values, authentic to you, from highest to lowest priority in your life. I'm going to show you mine, because this is on it's kind of a laminated card that I now carry around in my wallet. That's how important these are to me. And you can't kind of really see there, but they kind of range from top to bottom, and they look kind of like let me turn this off for a second. Hold on, slide presentations, stop. That's kind of bigger for you, okay? You can kind of see that there are two at the bottom, honesty and passion. and then it goes to velocity and accountability. No, I do not have them memorized. And then it goes from there to excellence, potential, service, and enlightenment. And so these are kind of the core values that make up who I am. Honesty and passion in the foundation, but even more than that is velocity and accountability, speed and accountability, being accountable to what I want to achieve. Even higher than that to me, importance is excellence. Higher than that is potential and reaching potential. As you can imagine, here I am teaching this class. And then finally, service to others. That's extremely important. And then this concept I call enlightenment, which to me means being in an empowered state of being comfortable, knowing who I am, knowing what I'm all about, personally evolving, personally developing. That's sort of how I define this stage of enlightenment. That's really, really important. It's my most important value. I think everyone should strive for, but it's deeply personal to me. So here's how to create this values hierarchy. Okay, then I'm going to tell you why this is critical. I want you to start broad. Start with all the cards, like I said. And you don't want to do it cards, that's fine. Bring up a web page of all kind of core values, adjectives on Google, and take a look. Write some down that resonate with you. Start with 20, 15. That's fine. And then try them on. Post them in different parts of your house. Try to order them. Oh yeah, that one's more important to me than that one. Or you know what? That one really isn't. It's this word. It's not this one. And over time, and this could take weeks. Whittle them down. Try to get to 5 to 7, maybe 8, and then most importantly, prioritize them. What are they in order of importance to you? Okay. Now, what's interesting is when I first, I've been doing core values exercises for businesses forever, literally for 10 years. And so it was very interesting to me and I picked this particular exercise up at Columbia. And it was very interesting to me that we were doing a core values exercise that I always did for organizations, but I was doing it for me personally. I mean, why does a person need core values? I mean, it seems kind of stupid. I did at the time. Except that when I finally got these down and I kind of put them on a card and reflected on them, what I started to understand was that these values explained all of the conflict and opportunity in my life. It explained why I had drifted apart from my best friend. It explained why certain clients didn't jive with me and we didn't get along. It explained why partners or vendors or family members and I just either had conflict or meshed really well. It was an alignment of core values. And here I was thinking it was something else, like personality or stupidity. It wasn't. It was sort of these beliefs we held most dear that were coming in conflict with each other or were supporting each other. And when you get core values alignment, like between business partners, hopefully, or even a family member, magical things can happen. And those are relationships you can really capitalize on because the foundation is so strong. And when you have core values misalignments, like I do with some family members, never mind, business colleagues or whatnot, I know now, I understand through this that there's actually only so much I can do, because at the very foundation of the relationship, there are simply fundamental misalignments. Now, from here, what do you think happened? Well, I started to make decisions about core values and align core values more closely when I had the opportunity. For instance, when I go to hire someone, I don't want someone that doesn't believe in honesty and passion and accountability and excellence. If they believe in being lazy, that's bad. Right? That's never going to work. Now, that's an extreme case. Usually there'll be some other nuancy combination. But now, because I'm aware of what's important to me, I'm aware of what's important to them. And this whole back and forth, this understanding of self and others, is something we're going to talk about over and over and over. And if you don't deeply understand what's important to you, it's simply going to be harder for you to assess these relationships, as I'm going to teach you how to do. Okay? So this is a critical exercise. It's perfectly doable, by the way, but do it. And I never would have gone through this if I hadn't been made to do it. And I'm so grateful that I was made to do it, because it's changed the whole way that I think about myself and others. And every time I'm confused about something that I don't understand about myself or someone else, I look at this list and I'm like, oh, got it. Yeah, that was easy and stupid. I don't know why I didn't even think of that. So this is really, really good interpersonal stuff. Now, the reason why this is so important, okay, is when it comes to basic questions like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Why are you doing what you're doing in a certain day? All of those answers come from your beliefs. They all come from your core values, which are the things you hold most dear, even if you don't know it yet. I held these things really close to my heart before I even knew what the words were, but I felt it, right? Because they're going to come out. Like, you're showing your core values all the time in the decisions you make. So, if those answers come from your beliefs and your beliefs come from your values, we're here to build a better foundation. And this is it. This is like the bottom. This is like you dug the hole, like the first layer of cement. This is it. So I can't ask you enough. Please take time to go through this, okay? Now, I'm going to transition from there, now that we're at the bottom, to the core concept of this entire masterclass, which is the Johari window framework, okay? A little bit of history. This framework was developed by two psychologists, Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham, thus Joe Hari, Joseph Harrington. They came up with it in 1955, apparently. Pretty cool history. And they primarily were using it in self-help groups and in corporate settings. As you can imagine, as you go through this, you're going to see kind of, how impactful that is. And Ahmad, you should already have the slides. Check your email. I know some of you got it, so make sure you have them. All right, so the essential thing about the Johari window, as you're looking at it, is there are 4 panes, okay? And we're going to go through each one. In the upper left-hand pane, you have what's called the open area or arena, okay? Those are things about you that you know and that other people also know. Like, you like the color green and you hate pizza and it pisses you off when people are late and so on and so forth. Like, that's all out in the open. That will never hurt you, okay? Now, if you go down to the lower right-hand quadrant, these are things that you don't know about you, but also others don't know about you. So it might be dangerous, but most likely they're just things you don't really understand and may never understand about the way you operate and what makes you tick. Fine, okay? What this course is going to deal with is the two opposite pieces, the hidden area or facade and the blind spot, all right? Now, the hidden area, the facade, is problematic. These are things you know about yourself, but others don't necessarily know. That's why it's called a facade. So you might know that you have zero confidence at all, anytime, but others think you do because you kind of put on this facade. You walk into the room, you do okay with yourself, and that's all right. The facade can sometimes be a problem. This class is all about strengthening those underlying beliefs, good or bad, or challenges, good or bad, so that you have less of a facade and you get to be more like Barbara, who is just unadulterated, authentic, right? And I think you see that in Sean, and I think you see it in me and the other mentors, and hopefully you're all kind of noticing that really successful people are just really kind of true to themselves, not bullshitters. And I was lulled into believing, well, that's easy for them because they're successful, so they don't have to pretend to be someone else. And that was, of course, you know what I'm going to say, the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at it was they got that way because they weren't afraid to be exactly who they are, okay? Now, the thing this class is most going to deal with is in the upper right-hand corner, which is called the blind spot. Those are things that people know about you, but that you have not yet realized or are not willing to admit yourself. And we're going to spend most of our time together shining a big, bright light on that blind spot so that it doesn't get in the way of you making money, being successful, finding happiness, all the other things we always want to do, okay? So this is such a critical concept. I mean, know this, use it. I'm going to teach you how to kind of look for these things in others, because as you study others, you will learn about yourself, okay? So this is a critical framework, all right? Now, the thing about the blind spot is the very first step is admitting we have a problem. So recognize that you have one. It's probably a big one. I certainly have a big one. I had a massive one. Now I probably still just have a big one. And the thing about your blind spot is it's blind to you. You're looking at it, okay, which is why I say it's built on your assumptions, the things you believe most passionately in your life that actually just are not true. All right. So this is all about awareness and self-awareness. The constant habit I want you to get into is opening your eyes and looking around and asking some very simple questions like, what are some of the things that could be there? That's a brainstorm I recommend you actually do. Sit down and say, like, if there were things that people knew about me that I wasn't willing to admit about myself, what would those be? And then secondarily, who can help you see and understand those things? Those might be two different people or two different groups of people, who can point them out to you and who can help you understand them. Because identifying them is one thing, being able to deal with them is quite another. Now, I'm going to teach you plenty of tips and tricks over the course of our time together that are going to teach you how to spot them and eliminate them. You don't want things in your blind spot, all right? It's blind spots where you have crashes, okay? And we're going to talk about kind of what that means. Now, here's the trick and the fact of the matter. People around you, family, friends, work colleagues, business partners, they've told you plenty of times what is in your blind spot, all right? You just weren't listening, or you were assuming them away. Remember my thing about making decisions, okay? My wife saying, like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to decide about dinner? She was telling me that there was a problem with me shirking decision making, okay? But I wasn't listening. I was excusing it. Well, I had an excuse for that, right? So think about what are some of the things people said about you that you've ignored or dismissed or said, yeah, but X, Y. What are some things that people have said about you, or that you've known people have said about you, maybe behind your back, that you thought immediately, well, that's not true, or that hurt you to confront that it might be true? Those are the types of things that might be lurking in your blind spot, okay? And yes, Patricia, they could be good and bad things. I have spoken to many a client and just told them to relax, because what's in their blind spot is that they're actually on the right path and they're panicking about it. So yeah, I mean, your blind spot can be good things and bad things. And so listening to what people are telling you is a constant exercise. The other fact of the matter is you have complete control over your blind spot because it's blind. Like, think about if you can walk around your house. Okay, let's put it this way. If you go into your neighbor's house, you're going to spot all kinds of things that you don't like: an ugly drape, a misplaced lamp, a dirty corner, whatever. Now, chances are your neighbor is walking around that house and has been walking around that house for so many years, they walk by stuff. They walk past stuff. I walked into my dog's bedroom the other day, and I was like, this place is a nest. I mean, the door's open, guests can see into here. I mean, I walk by here every day. Why am I just seeing it now? And this is how it is with our brains. Our brains are giant filing cabinets, right? And there's just shit everywhere. And so, we look at things over and over and over again, and eventually they become blind to us. So it's up to you to start to think deeply, to become aware of these things and pay attention when people are talking to you, when you're overhearing others. Pay attention to what they're saying and consistently ask, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's my blind spot. Oh, I wonder if that's true. These are the questions that will help you. And this is the difference between occur and occur. So in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, in Forum, which many of you know about, we talk about things that occurred to you and things that occurred to you, okay? Now, something that occurs to you might be that you had an employee quit and give you the finger on her way out. That's what occurred to you. But maybe what occurred to you in your mind is, I wonder what I might have done to create that behavior in her. Think back on those conversations. Oh, you know what? It occurs to me now. I bet 3 weeks ago when I said this thing, I wonder if she took that the wrong way. And this is sort of the awareness and the kind of italics. Know, like, do you really know? Are you really aware? And building awareness is sort of the principal thing I hope you all get out of this, because you can learn to be Jedi mind trick masters if you can become a lot more aware of what's going on around you. And it sort of starts here with not only looking for your own blind spot, but looking for the blind spots of others. In fact, you're going to be better at it with other people. So this is a lifelong pursuit. You'll listen to Barbara Corcoran talk about this. But if you pursue it, if you decide that you're going to be aware, oh, a blind spot does exist, I know I have one, it's probably big, I'm going to look for it, you've already won. Then it's just a matter of time. It's going to take time and outside influences, things to occur to you, in order for things to occur to you, okay? But you've already won if you decide to commit. And if you can dedicate mental energy to this, it could be worth millions and millions of dollars. When I was building my first company, we were a video production company selling video. And some of you know the story that I used to be like, we need to sell more videos, okay? That was stupid. We were selling videos for like $1,000 a pop. I'm not going to build $1 million company. And finally, through working with another agency, it occurred to me that that agency was a bunch of morons. And I was like, we can do this so much better. And so it occurred to me that if we just simply switch our thing from video production to agency, we'll probably make a lot more money. And over the next several years, we went from 300,000 to 3 million. Okay. So, what was in my blind spot was, I know I'm a video production company. Well, that's not like, that was a stamp I put on it that was prohibiting me from making the necessary pivot and moving forward. This stuff matters. It's not fluffy. It's worth money. Let's take a couple questions. Patricia, how do you filter through things from people that have their own blind spots or baggage that skews perspectives? So we're going to talk about how to manage difficult people. We're going to do that towards the end. It's a great question. And the long and short of it is, you can't fight their blind spot. And it's never, and I've learned this the hard way, it's never our job to help them understand they have personal development to undertake because what they're saying doesn't make any sense, or it's not logic-based, or whatever. Like, no matter how hard any of us try, that's not going to happen. All of you will make huge changes in your life out of this masterclass because you already decided that you would, because you committed and you're here. You had to get on the bike and start to pedal. And so, we are going to talk about creating a huge buffer, and this sounds terrible, but manipulating people. But that's kind of the best you can hope for when it comes to creating change. So that's not the answer you want to hear. But I think by the end of this masterclass, I want to see if you want to ask that again, because it's a really good question, but I think we might answer it. And Michelle, we're definitely going to answer this question. How do you use recognition of your blind spot? I'm getting this as, Michelle, how do you recognize what's in your blind spot? But you might mean like, once you recognize what's in your blind spot, how do you use it? And I think this example of like, what I went through in my business years ago is a good one. Like, how do you, and Michelle, I know you've had breakthroughs in much the same way, and often these are things that, what's in our blind spot, we're sitting right on top of it. They're truths that, and I just talked to a client today who will remain unnamed, and I asked her a simple question. Give me a percentage amount between 0 and 100% you are certain you're going to achieve success one day. She was like, 1,000,000%. Well, there you go. And everything else you put in the way of where you're going is going to be somewhere in your blind spot. And so those are things you want to just kind of remove from you. If you remember from the webinar, it's about this class is about removing stuff, not adding. Okay. So that brings us perfectly into self-sabotage, all right? Because whether we can or can't identify things in our blind spot, and once we do, whether we can and can't remove them, is all about self-sabotage. If we can get better at not sabotaging ourselves, then illuminating your blind spot, doing something about it, is going to become much, much easier, okay? So there are 7 questions that I want you to write down and answer, really, okay? Because you will, just in these 7 questions, I bet you can identify at least half of what's currently in your blind spot. When it comes to kind of, in my experience, when it comes to blind spot and self-sabotage, self-limiting beliefs, it's pretty easy to get to like 50 and 70% pretty quickly. It's the last part that's the hardest, because those are the things you really hold close to you. The stuff like, someone abused you when you were 7, and that's so hard. So hard. The stuff particularly that happens to us when we're young, so hard. But through these 7 questions, you can actually take a huge chunk out of your self-limiting beliefs and your blind spots. So I want you to put some diligent time into this. Okay. So let's go one by one. All right. Number 1, what do you believe are the components to success? This is so huge. All right. What will happen here? Okay. And not just to success, but to failure. What do you believe failure looks like? Okay. What will inevitably happen, okay, is once you write this down, and I would be shocked if any of you have actually like drafted, what does success mean to you? What does failure mean to you? Maybe you have. I'd be surprised. Let me know. What's going to happen is you're going to write down this definition, and then you're going to come back to it and be like, is that really it? Like, I wrote down a Chanel purse and a Ferrari. Is that really going to make me feel, like my time on earth was well spent and I'm fulfilled? Probably not. And you're going to go back and you're going to revise it and revise it and revise it. And eventually, what you're going to have is something that looks not so different from your current life. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Once you define the components to success, components to failure, you're going to find that your life is much closer to the components of success than you previously thought. The thing is, you're probably going to have one big thing, for most people it's money, that isn't exactly where you want it to be, okay? But that's one thing. That's not 20 things. And what I find when people go through this exercise is they're just a lot closer. And when you show them, well, you wrote down 10 things, and you already have 7 of them. They're like, oh, I guess when you put it that way, I'm a lot closer than I thought. And, when they define failure, it's like all this like terrible stuff. I'm like, have you ever gone through that stuff? Well, yeah, I went through like one of them one time. It's like, okay, well, there's probably not so much to be afraid of. The odds are not good. You're going to end up in total failure. So this is a great way to kind of trick yourself into realizing that all your self-sabotage is kind of for naught, because you're not so far down on the scale. You're not as far away as you think. And a lot of this is designed. Listen, a lot of this is straight up mind trickery. Like, I need to trick you into a different set of beliefs and a different foundation to your mindset, because as we're going to study later, it is quite unnatural to rip you away from your fight or flight response that we've sort of had for thousands of years in our prehistoric brains. So, if a lot of this sounds like this is a mind trick, hell yeah, it is. Of course it is. But it is entirely possible to trick yourself. And once you do, I think you'll agree that it's better than going back. And that's the thing. Like, it's a trick the whole time, but you still want to believe it. And then once you get to this place that you're seeing results and you're seeing a sort of a different perspective in your own head, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Well, I don't want to go back there. So that's what's kind of fascinating about this kind of work. So, all right, let's go to number 2, which is, what do you believe or believe in that you wish you did not? This is such a good question. And again, write your responses down. Please don't let them rattle around in your brain. For those of you who watched the webinar, like, how important it is to write stuff down and get it out of your head where it can downward spiral. Oh, guess who talked about downward spirals? Barbara Corcoran. So what do you believe or believe in that you wish you didn't? This is a critical question because of the key word. And the key word is what? Believe. What do you believe that you wish you didn't? And belief is an option, last time I checked. Okay. And this is a great exercise because once you write all of it down, you're going to be like, why do I believe that? that is just sabotage all the way. Like, I know I believe it because I wrote it down, but like, do I have is that logical? No. Do I have any basis for believing it? No. Do I have to believe it? No. So maybe I can let it go. Okay. I mean, it really can be that simple. But you have to back up to ask the questions. Take the mental time as you're doing right now at 8 o'clock, on a Monday night. Thirdly, what do you believe or believe in that you're proud of? It's important through this whole class, not just to beat yourself up that you suck, but to realize, is in question 1, how close you actually are to kicking ass. This is a really important realization that I need you to have, because if you don't have that realization, that's called self-sabotage. So, there are all kinds of things you believe in, like honor or hard work or determination or personal development that you should be really proud of. And I hope you are. I'm proud of you for it. So, that's a critical question to kind of inch you closer to what I call enlightenment or further away from self-sabotage, whichever way you prefer. Does that make sense? Are you with me so far? So question number 4 is reflective and a really hard one. And it's, what are all the ways you think you sabotage your own success? And this is a tough one because most people will sit down to write the answer to this and they'll be like, well, I don't know. I don't know. But then they'll tell me that they definitely sabotage their own success. So my challenging question to you is, which is it? I'm going to push on you a little bit. If you're sure that some belief or some assumption you have is preventing you from moving rapidly and boldly and confidently forward, then what do you think you're doing to get in your own way? And a good trick here is to look at your self-talk, okay? And to look at your habits, your days, the way you structure your life from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. The answers are in there. And if you can think about it in those terms, self-talk and how you structure your day, the decisions you make, you will find what you're looking for. Now, this question 4 might be something you work on a little bit now and you go back to after the second class, third class, or fourth class. That is how to use this class. Always circle back. This is not linear. Why? Because your mind is not linear. If it were, this would be much, much easier. Okay? These are like, put them down, brainstorm, go to sleep, leave them, come back in a week, come back in a month, come back to this in a year. I do this once a month. I go through all this stuff. And it's amazing to me what I see in month 5 that I could never have seen in a million years in month 2. Always evolving. And that's why earlier I said that there's a huge time component to this, that you have to just let things occur to you to help them occur to you. Okay? Patricia, should these be different than your values? I'm assuming you mean the things you believe in that you're proud of. Yes, that is different than your values. These are like phrases, like I believe in constantly educating myself and never being the stupidest person in the room. Stupidest is not a word, so I think I just violated my own rule. But that would be number 3, something I believe in that I'm proud of. But that's not a core value. Like, education is not one of my core values. It's just something I believe in that I'm proud of. Okay. Number 5, what is in your hidden area, your facade, that might be sabotaging your success? This is so big. Okay. This goes back to the don't fake it, act as if. Okay. Wherever you are faking it in your life, just stop. That's a facade. Okay. And what I'm about to say is not scientific, but going back to Barbara Corcoran and any of the billionaires, the super successful people, they are themselves so much that I've walked away from some super successful people hating them. Like, oh, that person sucks. You know why? Because they were being true to their core values, and my core values did not agree with theirs. And guess what? That's okay, because they were being authentically who they are, and it all starts with who. That's why they became successful. No facade. Okay. Bethany Frankel is the queen of this. I feature her in my book. She and I were hanging out backstage at Adweek conference in New York, and she could not be anyone but Bethany Frankel. She's just like super Bethany Frankel. And so that always stuck with me, how little she cares about what everyone else thinks. A facade is getting in your way because it's fake. It's not real. Do you want fake success or real success? Answer that question. And hopefully you want real success. Number 6, what are your bad habits? What are the things you do and think and believe that you know are wrong? Stop it. Like, stop the madness. There is no room for that in your life anymore. Make the call. You're here, you spent money to be in this class. This is the tough love section. You typically know what your bad habits are. Write them down, put them somewhere where you can see them, and make yourself a promise that you're not going to do them anymore, or at least do them less. If you cut your bad habits back by 20%, what could you fill that 20% with? Well, that's a great question, and that's only a 20% cut. Okay? So there's just no room for bad habits. Those are sabotaging you. the worst part is you know it and you let it happen. Okay? So that number 6, attack, attack, attack. You'll never be sorry that you stopped a bad habit. Be like, oh, I wish I had that bad habit back. Never. Never. Okay? So with that one thing, I give you permission to be hard on yourself. And then finally, number 7, what key assumptions make you who you are? What key assumptions make you who you are? Now, here in number 7, I want you to list positive and negative. Okay? I assume, okay, here's a great one, all right? I used to assume that intelligence equaled success. Now, I would have answered number 7 with that as a positive. Intelligence equals success. Why? I happen to think I'm sort of intelligent. That's debatable. Please don't put in the chat what you think. But because I always thought all I had to do was be smart to succeed, guess what? That wasn't a positive. That was a key assumption in the negative category. And it took me years to finally have that dawn on me. And it dawned on me after I met a series of home builders. I had some clients in the home building space. These guys were just dumb as rocks. I mean, no offense to them. And they were multi-millionaires, just crushing it. They understood one thing and one thing only, which is how to build a house. And they didn't know anything else. Not how to run a business, not how to manage people, not marketing, not sales, not anything. And finally, through meeting several of them, it dawned on me that, like, that's not correct. I have this assumption. And so all my time and energy is going into, all I have to do is be smarter and I'll be more successful. And that simply wasn't true. And finally I had to confront that reality, which was good, because then, after I could realize that that wasn't true, I could ask myself, well, what is true? What does commit, and make success happen? For them, it was being an absolute expert in one tiny little thing, where there was a market of people willing to pay them for that tiny little thing. That sort of changed my perspective. So I want you to make a list of what key assumptions make you who you are, positive, negative. And then I want you to ask yourself, what if that wasn't a positive? And what if that wasn't a negative? What if those should have switched places? What would that look like? This reminds me of a question that I used to build another one of my companies. I built one out of another, and the simple question I asked is, like, what if we did the exact opposite of what we're doing now? What would that look like? And when I kind of wrote that out, I was like, holy shit, there's a business here. Why have we been doing it this way when I should have been doing it literally the exact opposite way? Because all the things I assumed were true, that I just deeply held beliefs, I had to break them. I had to admit they were not true. And that's painful. That's my blind spot. Once I did, I was like, shit, this is going to be easy. Just do the opposite. That's a much better idea. But I had to let go in my mind. 2 wasted years. Yeah. So again, this stuff matters. The big one was number 7. What key assumptions make you who you are? That's a huge one. And as I said earlier, everyone's trying to go like this. Success doesn't look like this. It really looks like, looping back. And this is what I need you to do for this masterclass. Pivotal. Okay. And the answers aren't going to be obvious. You can't expect that you're going to write this stuff down. The answers are going to spring to life, and suddenly you're going to be a happy billionaire. First of all, there aren't that many happy billionaires. Okay. As I said earlier, is it really the money? I don't know. Make sure you're going for happiness if that's what you want. And this stuff takes time. It's a lifetime of learning. But as I said, your awareness is worth a huge chunk of your blind spot. All right, let's go on to emotional control. Okay, and the big theme here that I need you to wrap your mind around is this needs to be outside in. All right, so let me ask you a question, okay? In order to manage and control others, you must learn to manage and control yourself, okay? Put a number 1 in the chat if this makes sense, if this is logical, this must be true. Put that in the chat. In order to manage and control others, you must learn to manage and control yourself. If you agree, put a 1. Wait, see what you think. Ooh, you really are on a delay. Heather says amen. Michelle says 1. Joel 1. Inga 1. Tina 1. Flora 1. Well, I'm sorry to say you're all wrong. That is incorrect. Sorry to burst your bubble. It is actually much easier to manage and control yourself if you deeply understand how to manage and control others. I don't know if I've just blown your mind or you were like, Peter, you led us wrong, but it's just not true. Okay, this is true. It's much easier to control yourself if you learn how to control others. Why? Because of a framework I'm going to teach you called outside in. Okay, this is the same thing I was saying in the webinar, that it is impossible to see yourself from the outside if you're on the inside. It's not possible. That's why psychotherapists make massive amounts of money, and there's a massive industry around therapy. Okay, so first of all, I need you to wrap your mind around control others to control yourself. It is a very weird thing to think about, but stick with me, okay? And so I'm going to teach you 3 questions and get you working on this now, like right after the class or your next interaction with people. I want you to become a key observer. You are going to become the most aware person in a crowd because no one ever thinks of this shit. You are going to learn the Jedi mind tricks, okay? So question number 1, who are the people in your life you can use as a sounding board, AKA a test subject, okay? These can be kids, spouses, coworkers, employees, your mother, it can be anyone, okay? And it's time for you to be a scientific observer. I want you to deeply listen to what these people are saying and shut up. Just try not to talk, okay? Instead, proactively lead the conversation. Not be so most people, like, they have a conversation, they react and they react. It's like a tennis match, okay? And what are you thinking about the whole time? You're thinking about yourself because you're an egomaniac. Me too. It's okay. That's just how it is, right? And so, have you ever watched 2 5-year-olds have a conversation? They're having 2 different conversations. This one's having a conversation with himself, and this one's having a conversation with herself, and they're just like ships in the night. No idea. Okay. Adults do this too. They just do it with more of a facade. Okay. Instead, I want you to do this: proact, not react. And that leads us to number 2. Ask them questions. Okay. Try not to engage in the conversation. Just ask. Tell me more about that. What do you mean? What else do you mean? That sounds interesting. I heard you say this. What did you mean by that? Okay. And I want you to just study how people talk. Okay. What words they use. Can you find their key assumption? Can you find their core values? Can you pay attention to how their eyes move, to their body language, to ways they brush off things like ego, or they brush off a compliment, or this or that. You are looking into their blind spot. Okay. And I want you to be a great studier of this, because as you learn to identify it in others, which is a lot easier because you don't have your ego involved, you will learn to identify it in yourself and to listen to yourself better. Okay. And so number 3 is, how will you process that feedback? Well, I want you to remember the 2 P's: pause and post. All right. So listen to what they're saying, pause for a moment, and then what I call post it. Recap it for them. So you're listening. You're telling me about your cat. You're telling me that you can't manage to feed your cat enough, and I'm saying, so what I'm hearing is you can't manage to feed your cat enough. Like, what do you mean by that? It could be something silly, and then let the conversation go and listen. All right. And search for themes in the people that you're speaking with. This is particularly effective with spouses and kids and employees. Okay. Particularly, Marie, Lisa, Michelle and I are going to have some weird experiences together. Yeah, you two might need to not do this on each other, but perhaps on family members for sure. Kids especially, because they don't know what you're doing. And they're so involved in their own minds, they'll be happy to keep on talking. Unless it's like, a teenager with their head buried in the phone, in which case you probably should ask them even more to keep talking. But search for themes, through probing the people that are around you and investigating them, becoming an investigator into their emotions. You will learn a great deal about the people around you. And as you explore those themes, oh, I heard them say that. I wonder if they're deeply afraid of that. I wonder if they said this, but I wonder if they're worried about that way over there. I have all the time. It happens in your subconscious. Sometimes you've looked at someone talking to you and you've thought to yourself, I bet that's not true. I bet it's really this. So you've actually done this, but I'm asking you to do it more scientifically and all the time. If there's anyone in your life you need to get to do what you want them to do, this is step 1. Now, in another class, we're going to talk about what to do with this information and how to now Jedi mind trick them. But for now, all I want you to do is be an observer, to practice deep listening, okay, in the pause and post. All right. So yes, homework, observe others. In the next classes, we're going to go through techniques to control others. Now, it sounds terrible, but it's pretty awesome, actually. If you can learn to control others, you'll get much better about controlling yourself. I love that, like, I blew all your minds there. You were all convinced, like, yeah, I got to control myself first. Hell no, you don't. And I'll tell you why you should have known better, because most psychiatrists and psychologists I meet are the most messed up people. Don't tell them I said that. But they are the ones who got into the field because they have stuff to figure out. And through helping others, they figured it out about themselves. Does that make sense? Like, as soon as I said that, you're probably like, oh yeah, that's true. And the reason this works, all right, is you can't control what you can't observe. This class was all about observing and learning to observe. So it's hard to observe yourself. It's really challenging. If I teach you how to observe others, you'll be able to observe yourself. And so from going outside in, then I can teach you how to go inside out, so you can go outside in, and around we go. Flora, there is no question 4. There's just 3. And to recap, because these are important, who are the people you can use as a sounding board? So you can start to be proactive, not reactive. What questions will you ask them? Tell me more. What do you mean? Get them to talk. And then how will you process that feedback? Well, with the pause and post, recap. Okay, search for themes. Alrighty, that's it. It's 8:22. I'm going to leave some time for questions. That was actually really good timing. I didn't intend it to be that good. Yeah, that's it. Cool. So we went over start with who and core values. We went through the Johari window and thinking about blind spot. Listen, it's like there's a lot of these classes, and like as I said, you're not going to transition overnight. So if you just walk away from tonight thinking about your blind spot, oh, I have a blind spot. How am I going to identify what's in it? Oh, I just had a thought. Is that in it? That's okay. I want to make you a little paranoid and start to listen to your self-talk. Really important. We went over self-sabotage and the 7 questions. Go write them down. Answer them. Do the work, please. And then we talked about the beginnings of emotional control, controlling others, controlling yourself, and so on and so forth. So at this point, I will take questions and feedback, anything you're thinking about. Heather, no template. This is so kind of deeply personal. This is for your own, that Mindset Mastery workbook. Take that and use that as your journal, and that's for you. This is all for you. This is your time. This is your Christmas present to yourself. To give yourself the time to be a much better person in 2019. Now, what's also interesting, I don't, I'm not going to ask any of you to do this, but what would be very interesting for you to do is to write down some of the thoughts and feelings you have throughout the classes, because the tough work, okay, with mindset is that it's impossible to feel progress. It's kind of like watching your kids grow up or your puppy get bigger. Like the puppies are bad, they grow up too fast, but like the kids, like you don't notice change day to day, right? So you're not going to notice anything, and then 5 years from now you might be like, hey, I think I was afraid of that, but now I'm not afraid anymore. That's weird, okay? And it might never dawn on you because you're living in your own head. And meanwhile, I, as someone who observes very closely, might say to you, and I've said this to a couple of you, like, wow, you've like leapt. Your growth is insane. I can see it, and that's really cool. But it's hard to see it for yourself. If you write it down, if you document it, how you're thinking and feeling now, go back to it a year later, you might be like, wow, what silly things I was thinking and feeling, and that's how you know you've made progress. Michelle, how many blind spots can someone have? A shit ton, a ton. I'm discovering. I mean, that thing about decision making. I've been studying this stuff for 4 or 5 years. I just figured that out like 2 months ago. I was shocked. It was like, and I know better. I know I should have been listening to that excuse that I was making and asking myself, is that in the positive or negative category? I wasn't doing the work. Okay. So yeah, I'm discovering more all the time. For the components of success, is that our definition of success? Yes. Yeah, it is. And not the, yeah, write down the Ferrari if you want a Ferrari. Ferraris are great. Get it in red. I prefer red. But more so, it's like, how do you think and feel when you're successful? one thing that struck me about what Barbara said is that she described a time in her life where she was being bullied and couldn't rally the confidence to stand up for herself. That wasn't when she was 25. That was when she had already sold her business for $66 million and was confronted with Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. Now, most of you think if I sold my business for $66 million, I wouldn't be afraid of anything. You know that's not true. Barbara said it. So that's why when it comes to success, think well beyond the money. Think about what are the components: business, family, personal, mindset. How do you spend your day? Really define it. Because I think you'll find that, like for me, and I go back to my core values, like service. Service is my number 2 most important core value. And here I am, working with all of you, doing what I love. If I went and sold my biggest company tomorrow for $30 million, it's not going to change that. I'm still going to believe in service. I'm still going to be doing it. I'm a lot closer than I think. So then it's a cue for me to shut the fuck up. Stop being so hard on myself. Robin, this is great. Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I'll sit on all of this and think about possible questions. Yes, great. Yeah, and listen, sit on it. Bring your questions to next class. I hope you do, if nothing comes up now. Yeah, I mean, Flora, that's a great definition. Time off with my kids without worrying about work or anything else. So my question to you would be, what are all the ways for you to get that? What have you assumed you need to do to get there? And are those assumptions correct? Maybe, maybe not. Amy, I've had many of these moments where I came across a situation that would have previously been emotionally crippling. Now I look at it and go, that sucks, moving on. Yeah, I love it. I love that. I love to hear that. And I'm going to give you a cool framework for exactly that and a book in class number 4. Dodge, my daughter told me today I've changed so much in the last year. I thought I had, but she confirmed it for sure. My son did as well. And it's awesome. I mean, that's great, to hear when people are telling you, wow, I notice a difference in you. That's what this stuff is all about. And hopefully by now you understand step 1 is awareness, observation, being aware of what you're thinking and feeling, hyper aware. The only bad thing is once you get good at this, you become sort of a guru and you can't shut it off. Like so now when I hear self-limiting beliefs in others, I cringe. It's like nails on a chalkboard to me because I hear it, no one else does. They certainly don't. It's not my place to be like, ooh, that was a self-limiting belief. That hurt. that wouldn't make many friends. But so, once you get this, you're going to get quite good at it. And then you can't shut it off. So I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad thing. Dodge, you're so sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, the connection with the tribe is huge. And so I asked you earlier, like, who can help you see and identify things like the Most One I Will tribe are huge for that. Your Flex Fridays and your Support Saturdays and soliciting experiences. One thing that I noticed tribe members do is they go, oh yeah, oh good flex, and oh that's okay, you'll get through it. And like all those words are great. If I were going to do a Support Saturday because I needed support, I would ask, please give me any experiences you've gone through in your life that you think are relevant to this that I should hear. Nobody ever asks. That's what I would want to know. Because those experiences, those stories will help me reflect on what's going on with myself. I might be able to identify where I'm self-sabotaging or where my mindset's off. Just saying. All right. Inga, where does the emotional control approach come from? This did completely flip my whole perspective and honestly felt as though I had to control my own emotions to even be open to the observation or feedback of others. So Inga, do you mean like where actually did the emotional control approach come from? Like controlling others? That comes from, a basic understanding of human psychology. Yeah, I mean, I can't credit that to anyone except I've known several therapists that certainly, were still figuring out their own thing. That's my flippant comment about it, admittedly. I felt as though I had to control my own emotions to even be, oh, I see, open to the observation and feedback of others. Yeah, that's an interesting comment, Inga. I find typically people put up self-defense walls about reflecting on themselves, but they have no qualms about going and analyzing someone else. Most people think it's fun. And that's why, on the whole, I have found it easier to help people start outside. It sounds like that's not true for you, in which case, that's fine. There are going to be exceptions, but most people are, they're much better at listening and identifying things in others because they don't have their ego attached to it. So let's see. Lisa, can you have blind spots for certain situations but not in others, i.e. doing one way at work, another way at home? Yeah, so the blind spot there is why? And is it necessary to do it one way at work and another way at home? Do you think Barbara Corcoran is one person at work and another person at home? So I don't have to answer that. You know the answer. And so I think the question is what's misaligned? That could be people, that could be beliefs, that could be daily habits, could be all kinds of things. Hopefully by the end of this class, you ask this, what sounds like a very important question. Why is Lisa two people? If I'm interpreting that correctly, and if I haven't, then I apologize. But that's a good one. It's a good one to explore. It's 8:32. I want to be respectful of people's time. I'm happy to stay if there are questions. I'm happy to hang out. Otherwise, I'll start to wind it down. But hopefully this was kind of a good start. We have a lot of good stuff to come, a lot of good stuff. And I'm interested as well to have you try these techniques. I mean, I gave you several pieces of homework and several things to go try out on people and on yourself. So, oh, good, we got some more. Can you have blind spots for certain situations? Oh no, we did that one. Yep. I struggle with this almost crippling anxiety of constant fear that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just out of my league because I lack the business background. It's a belief that I realized tonight I don't want anymore. Good. What do you suggest and how I can kind of get over this? I suggest you listen to the stories of other entrepreneurs. In fact, Barbara talks throughout her talk about how much bullshit she had to tell because she had no idea what she was doing. When I started my company, I had no idea what I was doing. When Richard Branson started, he had no idea what he was doing. Nobody, and Ashley, you saw me speak at BusinessCon. You know, the moral of my story was nobody has any idea what they're doing. Okay, it's the difference between balls and no balls. It's not a difference of knowledge. Remember my story about the home builders? So have the courage, develop expertise, use that to form even more courage and confidence, and so on and so forth. I think and maybe this won't help you, but it might help you to know that no one else has the answers either. Shockingly, but that's just sort of the truth. And listen, in your defense, that took me almost a decade to learn. And I had to listen to so many entrepreneurial stories and finally go like, does nobody have their shit figured out? The answer was yes, nobody has their shit figured out. So then it was like, well, if that's the case, then the hell am I afraid of? I should just go about my merry way. That's what I decided to do, and that was the end of that one for me. So what you're describing is imposter syndrome. I've had it plenty of times, and I think what you realize that everyone's an imposter except the people who have done the work to figure out who they are and then are just confident in who they are. That's the secret. There is no secret. That's the secret. Michelle, so my blind spot could be something everyone tells me I do or a characteristic I have, and I always say, no, not me. Yeah, particularly the second one. If someone tells you you do something and you're like, yeah, but there might be something there. And it may not be the obvious thing, like back to my decision-making thing, okay? When my wife said, like, why can't you make a decision about dinner? I had an excuse for it. And then I could have said to myself, well, maybe my blind spot is that I need to restructure my day because I make too many decisions. That would have been the wrong conclusion. I had to dig way deeper than that, figure out that for some reason I don't want to be the final one to make a decision, which was in conflict with my value of wanting to kind of be my own boss, right? That's not really a value. That's kind of earlier I asked you to jot out, like, what does success look like? I make all my own decisions. So, then I had to explore that and realize that my shirking decisions was just stupid and I needed to stop. And so I stopped the habit, and that took a little bit of time for all that to develop. And I've also been studying this for, half a decade. So I kind of, once I identified that it was, and I was like, oh, I'm so stupid. I could work through it pretty quickly, and you will get good at that as well. So yeah, and particularly the second one, Michelle. Like, no, that's not me. People are telling you, explore it. Yeah, Michelle, no one knows what they're doing. I've heard it from, oh man, I listened to a talk by the founder of Uggs. The founder of Uggs, for anyone who thinks they have gone through some shit founding a business, no one has gone through shit like the founder of Uggs. If you ever get a chance to listen to his story, he had his patents taken away from him. He had his whole company taken away from him. He had best friends and wives run off. Everything that could possibly happen to him happened to him, and he just kept on going. And eventually, Uggs took off and great success. So, but he had no idea what he was doing. None. He screwed up every single way you could possibly screw up, and still made it. Dodge, people tell me I'm too optimistic. Is that a bad thing? Reflect on that, Dodge. Someone's too optimistic, right? They tell you you're optimistic or too optimistic. That's a great thing to reflect on, because what does too optimistic mean? If you are too optimistic, does that mean that you're just relying on the universe to give you what you want and not putting in enough hard work or diligent work? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of, that's one path that sprang to my mind, but it could mean something. And so I think the question I would ask myself if someone said that over and over is, if that were a bad thing, how would it be a bad thing? And analyze those responses. All right, is that true? Do I do that? Do I not do that? What if I didn't do that? What if I did the opposite? I don't know if you want to be too pessimistic, but you get what I'm saying. Like, explore those things. There are gems hidden in those nuggets. Yeah, I mean, if you see too much good in people and situations, you might be making decisions that maybe aren't the best. I don't know. I mean, again, I can't know that, but these are kind of the questions I want you all to learn to ask of yourselves. Are there any questions? Questions? I do want to be respectful of people's time. Oh, Trisha, sorry, I missed yours. What if your blind spots aren't really blind spots anymore and you are okay with whatever it is? Then that should be in your arena, your open area, right? If you get comfortable with a blind spot, like, okay, my thing about decision making, I know that's not in my blind spot because I'm sharing it with you. I have no qualms about putting that in the open. That's how you know it's definitely not in your blind spot. And I mean, you could know something and be willing to share it and just not have the opportunity to share it. That's also how you know it is not in your blind spot anymore. If you're willing to be open about it, it's not in your blind spot. Hopefully that helps. Dodge, my pleasure. Flora, glad you're loving it. Michelle, thank you for coming. If no one else has anything, I'll wind it down. And then I'll say, I see you all on Thursday. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, there's nothing else. I'm going to leave you to it. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Hopefully this was insightful. Hopefully you put these things to work. Please do the homework. It really is worth it. Remember something about this class, okay? Remember that the things you learn in this class are outstanding for business, for reasons I've already said earlier. They're also outstanding for all your personal relationships, for the big life decisions you make. So do the work. This is stuff you'll have until you're 95 years old. This is not flavor of the month social media. So I really hope, I'm a broken record, that you do the work and take it seriously, because it completely transformed my life, and I hope it transforms yours. I really do. All right, Andre, there will be a replay sent. What happens is I recap this, I download it, I put it on YouTube, so you can fast forward and rewind and watch it quickly, whatever you want to do, and then I'll send you the YouTube link. Okay? All right, everyone, I'm going to call it quits. Have a wonderful Monday night, a great week. I'm going to see you on Thursday. Take care.